Just before the American Revolution in 1776, Abigail Adams wrote to her husband, John, "Remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors." Well, we've remembered 12 outstanding ladies, and every one of them was a trailblazer. In celebration of their lives, we've paid tribute to them with these 12 star blocks. And now it's time to see how to set these stars together. Today I want to show you these 3 different settings. The first one is the 4-point star setting. Ooh, the stippling looks great around those stars because the stars just appear to pop right out of that background. Now, Donna Carter designed this setting, and it's easy to do just with squares and rectangles. You'll love it. Now, the next quilt was made by my sister Patricia, and this is the 8-point star setting. Now, I've already showed you this setting on the Susan B. Anthony star and on the Carrie Hall star. I love her Americana fabrics because she used one brighter red right in that center. Well, another quilt with the Americana fabrics is with the kaleidoscope setting. Now, I'm going to show you how to cut out those triangles using the kaleidoscope ruler. Now, the triangles just frame that block. It appears to make a circle encasing the stars. It's great. Now, I have 2 more quilts using that kaleidoscope setting. This is a quilt made by Nancy Loftus. What a great American idea, because she dug into her scrap bag. She found some wonderful purples and greens. Many of her centers have fussy cuts right in them. Now notice that she used a large white background square right in the center of her triangles, so then it appears that they're circled. But on Diane's quilt, Diane Knight's quilt, she used a print right in the center of her triangles. And now in this one, it looks like there's large stars with 4 points in them, and then it's surrounding all of the smaller stars. And she also did stippling around hers. Oh, it's wonderful in pastel fabrics. Well, let's stitch the threads that tie the women together. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is love. We'll remember all of the ladies like Julia Ward Howe. Now, she wrote the text to the Battle Hymn of the Republic after she visited an encampment of Union soldiers during the Civil War. She was only compensated $4 for that text. Well, our eyes will soon see the glory of this wonderful quilt. Now, the first thing you want to do is just check out each one of your blocks. Make sure they're pressed from the wrong side, and then check out the seams around the outside edge. See if they're straight. See if you have that 1/4-inch seam on all 4 sides. Now, the block should measure approximately 12¼ to 12½ inches. They should be about the same size. So just drop your square up ruler on there. Check them out, the diagonal line down through. This one is nice and straight on the outside edge, but I saved one for you. I might show you how to just square it up. Just along here, you see a little bit of rough edge, and I know that if you just take your square up, you can straighten this. This is the Eleanor Roosevelt star. So drop it with the diagonal line. Make sure that you have that 1/4 inch on at least these 2 sides. And if you need to straighten it, but have a little less, then compensate for it whenever you sew your block together. Okay, that looks good on that side. Turn it around, and then just do the remaining 2 sides. This one is approximately 12 3/8. We'll get that straight in there. Trim it off. And then from the wrong side, I like to just check and make sure that there aren't any dark tips that you might have to trim away so that you don't see it on the right side. Right here would be a little one. I'm just going to trim off. Okay, once you've got those all done, just position those in place. Now, I already started laying out my 4-point star, and that comes from lattice. that is cut 3.5 inches wide, and it's just 1/8 inch longer than your block. So get those all cut, and then cut some 3.5 inch squares, and those are sewn right in the end. Draw a diagonal line. It's similar to the 8-point star. Diagonal lines on both ends. Actually, it kind of reminds me of a lightning bolt there going in the opposite directions. But once you've done your stitching, then just take your ruler, your square up ruler, and trim it 1/4 inch away from the line. Let me just turn one more, trim these off. Actually, I think this one is easier than the 8-point star. Then once you've got those trimmed on both sides, just set the seam and then lift the piece. Press that piece flat. Ooh, looking good. Does look like a lightning bolt. Now for a 12-block quilt, you need to have 31 of these. So get them in position around the quilt. Let's just lay this one right here. Now I know you think I'm going to take these pieces and just toss these. But I found out that if I do a second seam on this and just assembly line sew them together and then square them up to 2.5 inches, they make a great scrap quilt. This is what I did. And it just looks like the 4-point star. This is the pieces right here. Did a fussy cut here and put some 2.5 inch light squares around it. That was all the scraps that were laying on my table. Now, let's get these positioned right in here. I have one more piece I need up here. Lay that so that the points are all going up to the 3.5 inch corner square. Here I'm going to need to have a corner square here, 3.5 inches, and then one piece right here. And you literally sew the whole center part of the quilt together. Do your vertical seams, then do your horizontal, so the whole inside of it is together. Now, the outside comes from wider strips. The lattice on the outside is actually 4.5 inches wide, and you cut it so that it is the size of the block plus an additional 3 inches. And so you don't have any seams there. You've got to add that 3 inches. Now only one corner goes on. These pieces go with the block, and then right over here in the corner you need to have an additional 4 that are 3.5 by 7.5. Actually 4.5 by 7.5. Oh, we better get those measurements right. Get those sewn into long pieces. This is going right up at the top. Now when you sew this together, you actually have to leave this very corner loose because we're going to work around the quilt instead of opposite sides. This gets lined up right there. Then the next piece we're going to put, it's going to finish off that corner right there. Whoa, this is looking good. And then this is the last piece right here, the third piece. See if I can get that lined up good. And then the fourth side, and when you get up to that corner, you've got about 6 or 7 inches. You just have to finish out. Boy, as soon as I get this whole top sewn together, I just need to add some borders, machine quilting, and a binding. Ooh, it'll be a great Americana quilt. The kaleidoscope lattice is just a little bit trickier, but I have some great tips to show you. Now the light background is cut into strips that are 6 inches by 14.5 inches. You need to have 62 of these if you're doing a 12-block quilt. Now take your 6 by 24 and line it up corner to corner like so, and then just cut on the angle. Then just turn your ruler, ooh, don't let that move, corner to corner, and then cut once again. And then when you take it apart, you have pieces that look like this. Now these pieces are going to be scrap. Oh, another scrap quilt kaleidoscope this time. You'll enjoy that one. Now these pieces just keep in 2 separate piles. I'll just move those closer to my sewing machine. Now the kaleidoscope triangle comes from 7 1/4 inch strips. You also need to have a kaleidoscope ruler with that. So just line up the 7 1/4 inch line on the ruler, right on the left end. Okay, that's looking good. And then just cut once up and then down, always away from you except that first cut. This end, well, this is just scrap. Oh, put it into your quilt. Now just continue flipping your ruler up and down, always lining up that 7 1/4 inch line. And I also like to look at lines on the grid too. You just keep the lines on the ruler lined up with the lines on the grid. You need 62 triangles as well. Now, when you put these together, you go, oh my gosh, these are really strange, because this is how it goes. You have the one piece right here, and you're going to take the triangle, and it actually is finished like this, and you need to create that straight line. I found out the easiest way is just to create a template. So you take the triangle and you flip it right sides together onto this, and you plan it. Let's just slide it right over to some template plastic. If we get this one right, we're just going to keep repeating this the whole time. So line up this edge, and with a marker, permanent marker, just draw the lines of that edge. This piece, when it gets flipped right sides together to it, on there should be approximately, let me line that up better, right up along here is approximately a 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to do some judging what I think, get that lined up right. Ooh, let's see. Okay, and then just trace that right on there, and that's the template. Now, if this is right, we're going to use that template every time. Okay, so whenever you start sewing, you should also have the needle hit right at a 1/4 inch in. When you drop that down there, and your first stitches are 1/4 inch. Okay, line that up, assembly line. So, and down here in the end, you've got a great tip hanging out. Gosh, that's about 3/8 of an inch, isn't it? Your stiletto is very helpful, helping feed that through there, keep that tip lined up at the bottom. A little bit different than what we've been doing. Now, I think I'll just take a peek myself first and see. Okay, looking good. So when you open that up, this should be one straight line going right through there. Do a whole stack. You're actually going to do 62 of those. So when you drop it on the mat, first you set the seam, and then you just lift that up and over. Make sure you've got that flat. Press that right over. Looking good, just a little tricky. Okay, now you do a whole stack of these, and like magic, got another set all ready to go. So when you put them two side by side, this is what it looks like. This piece is going to get flipped right sides together onto the left piece. And right here, you need to have a match point. And I find the best way is just to go ahead and take some pins, because you've got a 1/4 inch match, and your 1/4 inch is straight in. So I'm going to put a pin right there, and 1/4 inch from the edge straight in, 1/4 inch. Put another pin and just stand that up. Push them together and stand it up. Now I find out that whenever I do it like this and put the other pin, putting the end of the pin out, sometimes it distorts it. So I found the easiest way is to leave that standing pin there, but to pin additional pins on either side of the standing pin. Then I'm going to just really live daringly, take out the standing pin. Let's see what happens to it. Okay, I've got that tip hanging out right up at the top. This is really strange. It is a different angle than what we've been sewing the whole time. And you always think that you're doing it wrong, but you'll see. It works out. 1/4 inch. Just get your tongue holding right. Zip right along there. Hold that flat right at that seam. Match up the opposite end. And just go right across. And once again, I think I'll look first. It's going to be interesting to see if it matches up. Get rid of the pins. Ooh, that is a great match. Now, if it doesn't quite cross right there in the center, maybe you need to check your seam allowance right here on the opposite side, because there are several thicknesses of fabric that you need to go through. Make sure it's a 1/4 inch, and then you'll get that match. From the wrong side, all you need to do now is just press it, and your seams can't always go towards the dark. Just press them to one side on the back. And now we're just going to take that and just square it up to 12 1/2 inches. Use your square up ruler and line it up so that the 6 1/4 inch is right here in the center. And this will be approximately 5 1/2 inches wide. Just about that. Okay, 6 1/4 there, and then trim that off on one end and then in the other. And I want to show you this seam because the first time I did it, I said, whoa, I didn't do it right. Because right here, this is not exactly the same as using the 45 angle where the dark comes right out to the corner. This is a different angle. And so in the next seam, it'll be 1/4 here, and then it'll be 1/4 here, and that'll be perfect in the finished seam. So don't worry if it looks like that. It is right. Now, whatever width this is, you're going to be cutting out squares to set the whole top together. I'm going to cut mine actually 5 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to lay out 4 blocks, sew my top together, and then I'll show you just a bit of border. I sewed my top together, and I have to confess, not every point is perfect. So all I'm going to do is just hang it high and keep it moving. But it does look nice. I'm pleased with it. Now, take a look at the corners because they're the trickiest part. I already added a framing border around the outside edge. I flipped it right sides together and pinned it, allowing an extra inch hanging out. So once it's pressed out and flat, then all I need to do is just square up this corner. And the best thing to do right now is just to take a square up ruler and place it on the corner of your quilt. Oh, you want to have perfectly square corners. So I'm lining it up so that every line I see, I can set it with. Here I have a seam running along here. The lines are running parallel with that. Right along here I have another line running parallel with that. It's great. So I'm just going to line it up on this edge and then just cut that extra inch off. Ooh, perfect. Now, the next 2 borders on the opposite sides, once again, plan them so that you allow an extra inch hanging over the edge. Flip it right sides together and do some pinning. Now, people do like to pin different ways. Some people like to pin from the inside edge out, and then other people like to pin from the outside edge in, whatever your preference is. But then stitch along here. Once you're done, flip it out, press it, and then trim it so you have that square corner right there. So I'm going to completely have the quilt framed by this white background. Next one is a folded border, and that's great fun, just for a touch of color. I took a 1 1/2 inch strip and I pressed it lengthwise with the wrong side inside. And when you add this, you match up the raw edges on the outside. Do 2 opposite sides, and I like to actually sew with just a little less than 1/4 inch along there so that the next time you can add this one with a 1/4 inch seam and you won't see the stitching. So this is the plan. First that red folded border, then I'm going to add a blue around the outside edge, and then finish it off with this burgundy. Let's see if I can go ahead and get these corners lined up. Ooh, always going to be square, just like this, and then this one will come up here. So it goes right off the corner of the quilt. Looking good. Now, I'm going to set up a larger quilt and show you how to do some machine quilting on it. This particle board top certainly helps extend my sewing table. Now I have all kinds of room to go ahead and manage this large quilt. I took the outside edges of the quilt and rolled it in towards the middle. And then right here I put a quilt clip on so this roll is manageable inside the arm of the sewing machine. Now when you're working with a large quilt like this, you might want to go ahead and just take the end, particularly when you're down at the opposite end, and just lay it over your shoulder. Or if you would like, you could go ahead and fold it into a neat little package on your lap, and then as it comes off the end, it just pulls right off of you. Now I have my walking foot in place, and I lengthened my stitch to 10 stitches per inch. I've put my hands in a triangle shape, and that's what really works best. Put your hands like this, and spread the fabric apart. Keep it nice and flat. I'm stitching right in the depth of the seam as it goes along. I'm stitching actually in the low side of the seam. Now I do have neutral thread in, but you might want to put invisible thread in so as you go across the different colors, then you won't see your color of thread. Your bobbin thread should match your backing color. And then when you get to the end, you can just go ahead and lock your stitch in place, and then just raise your presser foot, take your needle out, and just cut it off. Now, I'm doing stabilizing stitches all down through the middle and then across from opposite sides. And then you can just go ahead. I showed you how to free motion around the stars the last time. You might want to just do some free motion stitching around the stars just to hold them in place. Now, I'd like to show you how to do the binding. The binding comes from 3-inch strips that are seamed together so they go the whole way around the quilt, plus you have about 12 extra inches. Just take the binding strips and press them in half with wrong sides in. And then once you have those pressed in half, you're going to just go ahead, leave your walking foot on, and just line up the raw edge right along the edge of the quilt, right along here. I like to leave it open right in the beginning. Leave a couple of inches up so that when I come back I can finish that off. Okay, let me get this in place so I can line that up. Okay, walking foot still in place. Now the binding and the backing are still around there. Some people like to actually baste this in place or pin it down, but I like to just keep it loose like this and just add it as I go. Now as you get into the corner, whatever your seam allowance is, I'm using the edge of my walking foot. You want to stop one more stitch about that same width and put your needle in, and once you put your needle in, raise your presser foot and just turn your whole quilt so that it goes to the opposite side. Drop your presser foot and reverse sew right off the end. And then once you reverse sew, you just take that corner and you free it. You lift it up at an angle. Let me see if I can get that perfect. Oh, we want to get a perfect miter here. Okay, you completely fold that up at a 45-degree angle. Hold this right here and fold it back down. And this time, make sure it's going perfectly straight across there. Ooh, that's looking good. And then just drop your presser foot and start stitching right where you left off, right at the edge. And you just keep on going the whole way around your quilt. Gosh, maybe take you an hour or so, maybe less if you're fast, huh? So now, once you've gone the whole way around, all you want to do right here with this edge, take your rotary cutter and your ruler, and you can go ahead and trim your batting and your backing away right up to the outside edge. And then here at this corner, this is what's tricky. Whenever you open that up, then that just pops right out into a miter. And then from the wrong side, once you've got your miter popped out, then all you have to do is just take this edge right here and you fold it so that you cover the previous stitching. Just cover the previous stitching, and you need to have straight pins. At this step, I'm going to set it up so I can go ahead and do some machine quilting, but quite a few people like to hand stitch this right here. Take a little tuck and fold in that miter right there. Do a pin right in that corner. Ooh, let me get that pin in there. And just go ahead and pin it around the whole way. And then what I like to do, instead of slip stitching it by hand right along here, is I like to take invisible thread and just stitch right in the depth of that seam the whole way around the outside edge, just to finish it off. Gosh, there's not much left to do on this. Just do the finishing up the binding, and it'll be a great finished quilt. You always feel such an accomplishment when you finish a quilt, and the folks around you are proud too. Well, we have so many reasons to thank our stars for their accomplishments. Thanks to Susan B. Anthony, women have the right to vote, even though she never had the opportunity. An abolitionist Sojourner Truth was beside her, gaining respect from unfriendly crowds. thanks to Jane Addams, childcare facilities are readily available and women gained rights in the workforce. Clara Barton taught us compassion in the face of disaster to care for others. 95-year-old Barbara Frecci and 5-foot-tall Harriet Tubman taught us to support our beliefs. All we need is determination. Many of these notable women took their stand around the quilting frame. They are the threads of the past that have woven us together, and that cloth can't be ripped apart. Remember the ladies, the stars across America.